Welcome to the Voice of Retail podcast. My name is Michael LeBlanc, and I am your host. This podcast is produced in conjunction with Retail Council of Canada. Meet Michael Appel, a seasoned senior executive with over 50 years of experience in the retail industry, including turnaround CEO at Rue 21. As the managing director at New York-based Getzler, Henrich & Associates, he leads the retail practice for the firm, specializing in operational turnarounds for retail businesses. We talk about the state of retail today, the role of social media, China factory direct model, what has actually changed with the modern consumer and what has stayed the same, what it takes to compete in 2024 and beyond, and what it takes to come back from the brink and create a positive forward momentum in modern retail. Michael, welcome to the Voice of Retail podcast. How are you doing this morning?
I'm doing great.
Fantastic. Where am I finding you today?
I am in Manhattan.
All right. Is that where you're from? Where do you live? Are you in that area? Talk about that.
Well, I live in Manhattan and on the east end of Long Island, and I work for Getzler Henrich, whose offices are on Madison and 41st.
Fantastic.
That's our corporate headquarters.
What's your background and what are we doing on the mic and what do you do for a living?
Okay, so I'm the managing director and lead the retail practice at Getzler Henrich & Associates, which is a financial restructuring and performance improvement consultancy aimed at the middle market. And I lead the retail practice there. Getzler has been in business for over 55 years, and they are now part of the Hilco Global family of companies. And
Big shop.
Yeah, and we're a boutique within the framework of a much larger company that Hilco that has like 26 operating companies, and Hilco is in many businesses from advisory to monetization of assets, anything you can think of, and many of those companies touch upon retail.
So you said mid-market. Define mid-market for us. Put some parameters
middle
around
market.
that.
We define middle market anywhere from small companies of 25 to 50 million up to $1 billion.
Okay.
So,
okay.
That would be the trajectory. We don't do the major bankruptcies or performance improvement cases like Bed Bath & Beyond or Target. Right. We focus on middle market companies, of which there are many, both in the retail and consumer product space.
Now, in for your firm, you said you're a boutique firm. Do you work outside of the U.S. or do you? And two-part question: do you work outside of the U.S.? You probably have retailers who have stores around the world potentially. And what makes you different? What makes you guys stand out as a boutique and successful in what you do?
Okay, well, the firm's been in business for 55 years, and what our point of difference is that we have very experienced managing directors and consultants that have great industry expertise as well as financial restructuring expertise. And frankly, we give very personalized services at prices that are very advantageous compared to the big four that are, Alex Partners, Alvarez, et cetera. So basically, we deliver the same quality of work at affordable prices for the middle market clientele.
Okay. And do you work outside of the U.S.?
If we need to, yeah, it all depends on the clients.
Sure.
We travel extensively, so definitely it's been we've done quite a bit of work outside of the U.S. and Canada, and if the assignment takes us outside the U.S., absolutely.
Okay, and talk about yourself a little bit more. What's your background? How did you get into this business, and what do you bring to the table?
Okay, so I started in the business way back when at Bloomingdale's. And I started as a merchant. I bought hard lines, and I ended up running the children's division. And then I was the chief merchant at a company called Fortunoff, which was the precursor to Bed Bath & Beyond. And then I've run a series of specialty retailers from Laura Ashley to Baccarat Crystal to Wilkes-Bashford. I'm very agnostic when it comes to the merchandise category and the channel of distribution. And I've had my own over the years, my own firm. And for the last 2 years, I've been working for Getzler. I also have done a lot of work as interim CEO, COO, CRO, as well as going into industry. So from 2017 to 2020, I was the chairman and CEO of Rue 21, which is a 750-unit specialty retailer focused on juniors. And I led the turnaround of that very successful turnaround of that company when it emerged from Chapter 11. And in June of 2020, I joined the board of Ashley Stewart, which is a plus size specialty retailer focused on the African American woman. So I've also done a lot of board work as well.
It's interesting. It's interesting listening to you because you have the language and lens of a real merchant. Even in the way you describe your roles as senior operating and leaders. So it's clear, lots of experience. So that's why I was excited about chitting and chatting with you. So let's talk about state of retail today. So I've been in this business a long time, not as long as you, and not as a seniors levels. We both probably seen a lot. I mean, geez, what a wild ride over the past couple of years. The highs and lows of the COVID era, right? You had big winners and you had big losers, often not for their own not because of their own thing. They just happened to be in the wrong place, at the wrong time, selling the wrong stuff. I mean, unicorns, these digitally native brands, their value has just collapsed. E-commerce growing, leveling off. Oh my goodness, there's a lot to talk about. But if you had to sum it all up, what's your assessment of the state of retail today?
Okay, well, the state of retail, retail has always been a challenging business, right? Because retail is the business that's closest to consumer, and the consumer is changing, and the advent of technology as an integral part of running retail businesses has accelerated the pace of change, both in terms of being able to give retailers more tools as well as giving consumers access to so much more information. So if you look at the history of retail over the last 100 years, there's always been new entrants, new disruptors, and people who we thought would last forever. Like Sears Roebuck are no longer in business, right? And yet they were the dominant retailer for decades in the United States,
Massive.
And that continues to happen, right? There's always someone new with a new concept entering the marketplace that is able to really answer consumer needs or develop needs that customers didn't think they had, right? In that regard.
How do you think customers have changed? So I hear that a lot, and I think they still look for great product at a great value. Obviously, some of the media has changed. They can shop online, but they could shop from catalogs before.
So I mean,
what do you think it is like? If I'm often asked that, what has really changed about consumer behavior in the context of retail?
Well, I do think that in terms of consumer behavior is they have access to so much more information, all right, in their purchase decisions. So a lot of the leverage has shifted from the retailer who used to, they used to tell the consumer what they needed to buy to the consumer who has access to a lot of information. And it's not just either in store or on e-commerce. It's the whole advent of social media, which has changed a tremendous, has changed the sort of the whole landscape, right? In that that they're looking right, and so that's a big change, and also I think that consumers are now, because of Amazon, right? The app with Amazon, free delivery in an hour, et cetera. Everything, the pace has picked up. But yet at the same time, I think your comment is very well taken in that really what do retailers do, right? They're in the business of buying and selling merchandise. Yeah. And if they do a good job doing that, right, and execution's not always that easy, they will be successful.
What do you think of these, you mentioned Amazon, and they were certainly a huge force, are a huge force. What do you think of this new China factory direct model? And of course, I'm speaking of Shein and Temu. They seem to be disrupting Amazon. I mean, they're leveraging international postage rates, and they're laying a little bit of narrative against this. I'm only going to shop with retailers that I believe are ethical or at least behave properly. Right. Well, what do you think? What do you think of the model, and do you think it's the risk that everyone considers it to be?
It's so they're certainly a disruptor. Okay. But they're not the only fast fashion retailer out there. If you look at H&M and Uniqlo and Zara, they've been in that fast fashion business for a long time. The difference is that the sort of the rock bottom prices and huge assortments that are always changing. Yeah. But it's really the price for the product that's getting them, and they're not necessarily shipping to consumers the next day. When you look at it, it may be 2 to 3 weeks because they're waiting to see whether enough consumers want to buy that item before they place their orders with the manufacturer. And the one thing that is driving the popularity of it is not only the huge assortment, but also the prices. And they may have made use of, 321 process, whereby if you ship to one consumer less than $800 worth of goods, you're not paying duty. Yeah. And that's giving them a 26% advantage over people that are importers or people that are making in the United States. So that's enabled them to do it. The issue about that's interesting about Shein is that, it's a $45 billion company, but they're now starting to they're doing a couple of things. Mm-hmm. One is they're looking to produce in the countries where they have big businesses, which is going to be interesting because I don't know how you make a T-shirt in the United States that you can sell for 99 cents and make money. Okay.
Not legally anyway.
Correct. So, and then there's also the longer term issue of how important is sustainability and how important is, ethical sourcing to the consumer. And, you have to sort of break it down by demographics. Yeah. When you're dealing with teenagers, all right. When I was running Route 21, we did focus groups on that issue about sustainability, et cetera. Well, our customer at Route was, a young teen gallant guy with not a lot of money. And basically their attitude was, we love the idea, but we're not willing to pay more for it. Okay. Right. And so, but if you're buying Stella McCartney, right. Yeah. And, she's doing mushroom leather for, $1,200 for a bag or something like that. Well,
hard to afford,
cool, right? You can do it.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's a fascinating, we could spend a whole half hour just talking about this paradox of what people say and what people actually do.
Right.
My last question on that, and then we'll get to some other stuff, is what do you think about their tie-up with Forever 21? I mean, they're starting to use...
I was going to mention that.
Right?
It's interesting, right? Because they're starting to change their model. And they're saying, we need to sell in stores, right, in order to sustain our growth.
Yeah, they've had big success in pop-ups. They did one here in Montreal and Toronto. People were lined up down the street. I mean, it's a buzz, right? It's a buzz. Good for them.
And also, look, ABG is saying, okay, well, how are we gonna sort of salvage Forever 21, right? Which I don't think it's doing that great. So this is a sort of an interesting combination, right? Yes. Where they're hoping that there's synergies that are mutually beneficial.
It's like tossing one of those big lifesaver circle things into the Hudson River, right? Here you go. Let's see if this works.
Right? I mean, one way or the other, if it works, great. If it doesn't, they still have a $45 billion a year business and growing. So
hard to see a downside at this point, right? Hard to see.
Right. Exactly. I mean, the issue too is that there's been a lot of people have been complaining about the quality, so that when they get it, it's not. It doesn't mean...
You might as well ship it direct to a landfill, right?
Well, that's what some people are saying. And for others, and it all depends, for a young teen, they're going to wear it once anyway. What do they care, right? And then it goes in the pile on the floor in their bedroom, right? And then they buy more stuff.
It becomes a shimmy in the car, right? It becomes Instagram. You mentioned social media. I mean, I was actually doing a keynote presentation to TJX merchants yesterday. And somebody asked me what I thought about how much they should put in social media, just generally as a retail. And I say, with my clients and I don't even ask what your budget is, just double it. On the one hand, you got to play. On the other hand, it's a bit of a distorting thing, right? In terms of what and how people buy stuff. And it's another point of information and contact. Okay. Mm-hmm.
So when you're looking at it and what you're bringing up is something that I think is something that retailers have to really think about is in order to be competitive today, right? You've got to be omnichannel, stores, e-commerce, and you've got to be active on social media. And that means that the cost of doing business has gone up a lot. And the retailers have to understand, and probably faster than what retail sales are, unless you're really hot. So you've got to figure out a way to play in those channels and still wring more efficiencies out of your operations.
I mean, or do you? I mean, I'll give you two examples. Yesterday, I was speaking to the 300 merchants from TJX, no e-commerce to speak of.
Right.
They just posted great numbers. And then you've got Primark. I've talked to the presidents and leadership of Primark as well. They said, listen, the model doesn't work for us. We can't make money doing it, so we're not going to do it. But they're still successful, right? So are they the exception to the rule, or are they telling us something?
I think in the value segment, in that treasure hunt segment, off price, that model works better because the customers, part of the experience of buying from those retailers is the treasure hunt, right?
Yeah.
And that's always been the case.
Yeah.
And so, it's not always that easy to replicate that online. And, they have more than enough customers and more than enough sources of supply, right? More than ever to keep the racks full. And also what's been happening is that they're getting access to, better brands. So they're continuing to
surprise and delight. The surprise and delight factor going up.
Exactly.
Hey, it's a good segue to my next question. I mean, let's talk about success and failure. In some ways, it's a weird way, but I think the COVID era hit the snooze button on a bit of business, if not transformation. I mean, I would regularly talk to the media. Usually Q1 of any year, most of the retailers who are in trouble kind of declare for one reason or the other. You know why? And we had a bit of a lull in some weird way. Like even think of the department store sector, we had a bit of a lull. There's been some notable exits like Bed Bath & Beyond that you mentioned. But, what's your assessment of the days ahead? Is there, I don't want to call it pent-up demand for people getting into trouble, but what do you think's ahead? And then we're going to talk about what you think makes the difference between winning and losing today.
Yeah.
What's your assessment?
I think that's a very good question, and it's on a lot of people's minds. And I think if you really look back over the last 20 years, there's just been a bifurcation in performance between those retailers and brands that have their act together and continue to innovate, invest in technology, and really mine, their customers and understand their customers, and those that are sort of treading water. And with the low interest rates and easy access to capital, a lot of these companies sort of got a pass. And it's going to be interesting to see now that interest rates are up, money's tighter. Okay. Mm-hmm. So they're being more selective.
And they bought a lot of, I call it the great buy forward. We bought not necessarily all in apparel, but we bought a lot of stuff during the COVID era, right?
Oh, yeah, because what else did we have to do, right? We were staying home and couldn't go out. And if you look at the United States has always been a consuming economy, right?
Yes.
Our customers love to buy.
Yeah.
So, and I don't think that's ever going to change. Just like when people talk about, well, what about Christmas? And I say, well, there are going to be winners and there's losers, but Christmas comes every year. All right.
Yeah,
so we're only talking about a few percentage points differential, but that doesn't mean that, you'll have Lululemon that might be up 30%, and then you have other people that might be down 20%, right? Because they don't have their act together, and consumers are being more selective. So they're saying, I'm going to shop with the winners or the people that really understand me. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. And also, part of it is whether or not the lenders or the private equity owners are willing to push the button and say, you know what, time to move on.
Well, a couple of quick follow-ups. Did you see in the news, and I had to give a good laugh, the CFO of Best Buy called it funflation. People had money, but they were spending them on, $600 Taylor Swift tickets. Do you detect a post-COVID behavioral change in consumers where they're a little more, there's two narratives here. One is that consumers are a little more focused on experiences. We thought that would happen, right?
Right, of course.
No question there. But the recent Wall Street Journal article talked about, well, you know what? People are buying a little more stuff because work from home. I know in Manhattan, what did I read? That there's the equivalent of like 30 Empire State Buildings unoccupied. This is a big deal in the economy, don't you think?
Yeah. Well, it's like everything else, right? Things change. And so, and you also have the younger generation has a different attitude towards life and the balance between work and leisure time, right? And me time. And so what you're seeing is, they're going to be, there's 30 Empire State Buildings, empty in New York. It's even worse in San Francisco, all right, which is a disaster. And so in Manhattan, when I think what will happen in Manhattan is that, there's a shortage of affordable housing or housing period. So I think you're going to see repurposing of the real estate. The industry's always done that. You're seeing that in the C and D malls, right? That's happening where there's excess capacity anyway. So I think that those are still assets, right? What right now, and what you'll see, I think in the real estate part of it is that there's going to be, that's going to be very active in restructuring, and that's going to be restructured. And then investors will be able to buy those properties at prices where they can afford to transform the asset, right?
I think some of those buildings, though, anyway, we don't want to get too off into this, but I know that a lot of those buildings just can't be repurposed. I mean, I'll buy bulldozer stock before I buy them, because the modern office building, nobody wants to live in the center of a modern office building with windows, right? So there's a percentage.
You know what?
Never say never, right? Never say never.
And clever real estate people can find ways of doing it. And the big thing now, if you look in Manhattan and you look at the construction that's been going on, is that the amount of amenities that they're offering to people who either rent or buy, and that becomes more, and again, that sort of goes into the experience, right? It's not like it's not just, it's your apartment, your condo, and that's it. It's like there's a gym, there's a a swimming pool, there's a
there's a Wegmans
for the kids, all that stuff.
Wegmans, right? I mean,
exactly. So,
You've been saying, kind of a last big question for you. You've been saying, the difference between winners and those who are less successful is getting their act together. So let's talk about advice. What does getting your act together mean? And I'll frame this for you in two things the listeners, my listeners, retailers should start doing, and one thing they should stop. In your language, is getting their act together. What do they need to do to survive and thrive in 24?
Right. Well, I sort of call it back to basics. Okay. Retail is not brain surgery, but execution is difficult. And you have with my clients, I have a certain playbook, right? Mm-hmm. And the playbook is, the first thing you need to do is really have a deep understanding of your consumer and the consumer segments. And a lot of retailers, believe it or not, don't have the research. Consumer packaged goods people, of course, they're always driven by the research. But a lot of retailers don't. And so the first thing you need to do is gain a deep understanding of your customer and your customer segments, because customers for retailers are not all the same, and they have different behavioral and attitudinal profiles. And so you need to understand that. And when you understand that,
that's a red flag for you. So when you go in to meet with somebody who might be getting into trouble or just, talking about your services, and you want to hear first about how they understand their customer and
exactly.
depth. That's a big first thing for you. Yeah.
Absolutely. The first thing I ask is, I want to see the research on your consumer.
Okay.
And more often than not, companies that are challenged don't have any, all right? Or it's old, or it's not up to date. And it's the kind of thing where, we wouldn't spend the money to invest in that. Well, if you don't invest in understanding your customer, all right, you're behind the eight ball right away, because that informs your strategy. That informs every piece of your strategy. So that's number one. Number two is really you have to have an A team. You have to have a team that has the capability of executing the strategy that you've developed for that company. So that's that. And then
let's stop on that, because I've been involved in a bankruptcy with a retailer, and I was brought in by private equity of a new team, and you're right. They really assembled they focus assembling a top team, but the talent gets harder and harder to hire. No, as you start to circle around the drain, you start to lose the talent. Well,
they're there though. I mean, there's enough people out there, and sometimes you have to look at around the edges. You can't look at the traditional, the way the search firms define it all.
You're not bringing over the CEO from Macy's. Maybe you're bringing somebody like yourself, a workout expert, and somebody who's
depending on the situation. Exactly. Yeah. And there's a lot of talented people that are no longer in the industry. All right. But would come back for the right situation. Or there are people that are ready to go to the next step, and they don't see a path to that in their current companies.
Sure.
So, I think that there's enough talent out there if you're willing to be open to understanding, what are the what's the expertise that's required, and matching that with people. There's an awful lot of smart people out there. So, and I can't say that retail is necessarily, overflowing with them in some of the current companies we look at.
Let's. What's the number one? I don't know. What do we call it? A mistake or misunderstanding that you come across, and that you'd like to say, listen, I that may have worked before, but it's not working now, and it won't work in the future. What's that number one thing that pops out?
Okay, well, I sort of call it. It's sort of the denial factor, okay, which is a lot of managements in these challenge situations feel that all they have to do is do what they're doing better, right? And that'll fix the problem, instead of saying, we need to start doing things differently, all right? We need to invest in technology. We need to get the research. We need, the building blocks. We need to fix the product, all right? That's the other thing. It's like, with all the discussion of e-commerce and AI, et cetera, there has been a lack of focus on, it all starts with the product, with the right product. And I think, and differentiated product, right? Why do you have a reason for being, right? Why do people come to you? Because you have product that they relate to and feel works for them. And I think that we're not talking enough about that. And then the other piece that I don't think we talk enough about, especially in store retail, is how do you recruit, train, and retain frontline employees? Mm-hmm. It is a huge, huge, issue that people aren't paying enough attention to. And I've done work over the years with a fabulous company that's based outside of Toronto called Axonify. Have you ever heard of them?
I have.
Okay. And we actually used them at Rue when we were about to launch our loyalty program. And we needed to be able to train our associates in 750 stores to explain, get people to sign up and help them in that loyalty program. And they did a fabulous job. And, it's an AI powered learning system that does a wonderful job in terms of employees. And the idea is that learning is a continuous process. It's not one and done, right? So I think that, the focus on frontline associates is tremendous, because if you look at the ROI, if you're able to first of all, you got to hire them, right? But that's that. In some ways, you pay enough, you hire them. But then, if they're trained and engaged in the business, they're going to stay, and that means that they're going to be much more confident in dealing with their customers, and that will drive revenues. And just the cost of turnover, which people don't calculate, is enormous and has always been a big issue in the retail business.
Yeah, no kidding. That's my last comment on that is this isn't a short-term challenge, right? We could see demographics. This is
absolutely
a long-term challenge. Well, listen, this has been great. Where can folks? Are you a LinkedIn guy? Where do they get in touch with you, and where do they learn more about your shop?
Well, I have a posting on LinkedIn under my name, and then Getzler Henrich is located on 295 Madison Avenue in New York. My direct number is 917-789-3615, and my email address is mappel, mappel, @getzlerhenrich.com. Well, so I know it's a tongue twister, but
it's all right. I'll put it in the show notes. Thanks for joining me on the pod. It's been great chatting. You got such depth of experience, both historically, but more importantly, today and tomorrow. So thanks for contributing, and thanks for joining me on The Voice of Retail. Continued success, and have a great rest of your year in 2024.
Thank you, and it's been a pleasure chatting with you.
Thanks for tuning into this episode of The Voice of Retail. If you haven't already, follow on your favorite podcast platform so new episodes will land automatically each week. And be sure and check out my other retail industry media properties, the Remarkable Retail Podcast with Steve Dennis and the Global E-Commerce Leaders Podcast. I'm your host, Michael LeBlanc, Senior Retail Advisor, Keynote Speaker, Rethink Retail 2023 Global Top Retail Influencer. If you want more content or chat, follow me on LinkedIn. Safe travels, everyone.